title, what we'll be making today, and these are all the ingredients that you will need for today's recipe. So you're gonna need barbecue sauce. The Kraft one is a really good brand. Garlic powder, onion powder, adobo, elbows macaroni. It looks like this. I usually use razzoni, but today Barilla is good. Extra sharp Cracker Barrel cheese. This one is a really good one. You're gonna need cream cheese as well, 1 box or 8 ounces, some butter, vinegar to clean your ribs, some oil, salt, carnation milk, paprika, all-purpose seasoning. You will need some blended seasoning, and I will show you guys later how to make that. Lime, 1 cube of Maggi. You have a red pepper, a green pepper, and you will not need the whole thing, just a little bit, probably like 1/4 of it. And also for your equipment, you are going to need a grater, a baking pan, a small pan, a strainer, the pot, a small container that's for your cleaning, and a chopping board. Also, you will need that as well, and a smaller container for your macaroni. So first, you're gonna go ahead and put some water and vinegar inside of a bowl. I'm gonna do a 1/2 portion of ribs, so I'm soaking them in the water and the vinegar. The other portion I will put in the freezer. You're gonna take a lime. This is usually how I get it, so that the juices can come out properly. We're gonna cut it into 3 pieces, and we're gonna marinate the ribs in. Then we are gonna take the lime and rub it all against the ribs so that we can just get any excess grease or any, anything that comes in the packages that's not supposed to be on the meat. Now with this, I do change my gloves frequently because I don't want any cross contamination. So now we're gonna drain it out and take off the little excess fat that's on there. It does not usually come with that much fat, but just to get it off. Then once more, we're gonna rinse it off. Take the limes that were in there and repeat again. This way we need to make sure the meat is very clean. Now we're gonna add our seasonings. So I'm changing my gloves once more because we want a nice clean glove free of any grease or fat. So we're gonna go ahead and put the blended seasoning, some all-purpose seasoning. You don't want to put too much seasoning because you don't want your food to be too salty. We're gonna go ahead and put the garlic powder, the onion powder, this is some of the adobo, a little bit of paprika, this is some cayenne pepper. I do like my food spicy, so that's why I do put the cayenne pepper, but if you don't, you can skip that step. So this is everything mixed together, and I'm just gonna add a dash of oregano in there and a little bit of barbecue sauce to bake it while it's in the oven. So you want to try to get as much seasoning as you can possible, but not too much, so that your meat has flavor. And after this, we're just gonna place it in the fridge for like 10 to 15 minutes so that the meat and the seasoning could saturate in everything. Okay, so the meat is out of the fridge. We're going to get the long baking pan, and we're gonna place the meat one by one inside of it. As you can see, what I usually do before, I taste it to see if it has enough salt, because you don't want to finish cook and it does not have enough salt. So at that point it did have enough salt, so I'm gonna go ahead and start placing them into the pan one by one. So at this point, with the remainder of the seasoning, you're just gonna put some water into the pan and you're gonna pour all of the juices inside of it, because you do not want your ribs to burn and you still want it to maintain its flavor. Okay, so at this point I am gonna take aluminum foil and wrap it over it. Then we're gonna place it in the oven. Remember, our oven is preheated to 350 degrees. And we're gonna leave it in there for about 15 minutes. At this point it is smelling so good. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take off the aluminum foil and we're just gonna mix it around to make sure that each side is being cooked properly, and then we're just gonna leave it back in the oven uncovered. So we're gonna get started on the macaroni pie, and this is a half pot full of water. So while everything is baking, while you're doing each step, you really don't have a chance to sit down, because when one thing is finished or halfway, you have to get started on something else so that the whole meal is cooked as one. So we're gonna add some butter. I usually add more butter than oil when I'm cooking with spaghetti or pasta, because it has more flavor and I don't want the food to be overly greasy. So we're gonna add some butter. This is probably like 1 pot full spoon of butter. Then we are gonna go ahead and add a little bit of oil. That amount of oil is just the right amount, because remember, butter already has oil in there, so you don't want to put too much oil. Then we're gonna go ahead and put some salt. That amount of salt should be good. During the process, if it does need a little bit of more salt, we will add. And then we're gonna add now some adobo, more adobo than salt. And the adobo is for the flavor, the salt is just for the amount of salt that you're gonna have in the macaroni. We're gonna go ahead and stir this and let it come to a boil. This is how your water should look while it's boiling, and we're going to use a half box of macaroni. This serving does not require that much, but if you are feeding more people, you can do a whole box. Now we are gonna start cutting the cheese, and I'm just going to use the chopping board just to place the cheese on top of it. I don't really use chopping boards like that. I prefer to use my hand, but if you are not that good with knives and you're afraid you're gonna cut yourself, just use the chopping board to be safe. chopping it into just cube pieces so that it's easier to grate. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't, but today I felt like doing it. So you are going to use this side to grate it. Whenever I grate this cheese, it always reminds me of when I was smaller. I would stand in the kitchen and wait for my mom to give me some. It tastes so good. Trust me, you will not regret it. Now that it's done grating, we're gonna add the cheese to the fridge. So now we're gonna cut our peppers. What I usually do, I cut them into long, thin slices, and then I will cut them into squares. Again, if you're not that handy with a knife, please use the chopping board because you will cut yourself. So after I cut everything into squares, it should look something like this. This is the finishing touch. If you're not a person that likes too much peppers, you can do a half portion of this or even less, but I like to use a good bit of pepper so you know the flavors are saturated inside. Now also with this, we are going to take it and we're going to place it in the fridge as well because peppers does carry water and we don't want it to get watery because our kitchen is hot. Now by this time our macaroni should be done boiling. Once they start to puff up like this, they're usually done, but we're going to test it out by poking a knife through it. And usually if it drops or if it goes right through, it is done. So now you're going to turn off the stove. So depending on how you like your macaroni texture in your macaroni pie, before you cut the peppers, if you do like it a firmer texture, you can turn off the fire then. But if you like this more of a softer to firmer texture, then you can turn it off after this step. So what we're doing now is we're draining the macaroni and we're gonna get ready on the secret sauce. So for this part, you're gonna put the fire on a medium to low, more on the lower side because we don't want this to burn. Now we're going to first pour 1 can of carnation milk inside. Then we are going to grab our room temperature cream cheese and put it inside. Now let's start seasoning. We're gonna add our adobo, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and we are going to take the peppers that we did put in the fridge and we're gonna put it in there as well, and a little bit of cheese. You don't want to put too much cheese inside. Also, if you are a fan of mozzarella cheese and you do like that, you know, stretchy cheesy texture, you can add mozzarella cheese to this recipe, but I am really not a fan of it, so I don't add it to it. Now we're just going to break the cream cheese inside of this so that everything can melt as one. So with this, we're going to keep stirring and stirring this until the cream cheese has fully melted, because you don't want it to be clumpy and everything else is cooked. Okay, so at this point I'm going to taste to see if it has enough salt. That will determine how our macaroni will taste. So after tasting the sauce, it has enough salt. It should have enough salt if you're following the amount that I put inside. So we're going to pour the macaroni back into the pot that it was boiling in, and we're going to pour the sauce on top of the macaroni and mix it all together. So now you're going to taste the macaroni to see if combined it has enough salt. If not, just add a little piece of the chicken Maggi to it, and that should give it enough salt. And now for this, our macaroni has been poured into the little pan, and we are going to take our cheese that we have left over and we're going to sprinkle it all over our macaroni. After about 30 minutes, this is how your macaroni pie should look. Nice golden brown, crispy around the edges, and ready to devour. So just to add a little touch, we're gonna sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, depending on the mood, but today I felt like doing it. So we're gonna sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top and let it settle in. Now our ribs should look like this, not too dry, not too watery, the perfect texture. So when we add our barbecue sauce, we can have that nice barbecue feeling. And this ribs did cook for about 45 minutes to an hour because I like it tender. I don't like it hard. So this is how it should look. At this point, I wanted to eat everything. So now you'll just add your barbecue sauce, put it back in for 5 minutes, and you are done. This is how it should look. Very, very good. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more of these videos, and tell me how yours came out. For the green beans, you just need to boil it for 5 minutes with some black pepper, and that is it. This was so good, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it too.